Welcome to Mindful with Minaa, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well-being. I'm your host, Minaa B, a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self-awareness and self-efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, Mindful community? So if you've been following me on social media for a long time, you might notice a phrase I always say, which is, you are responsible for giving yourself the life you think you deserve. And that's actually what I want to talk to you about today, because I think a lot of us struggle with how to give ourselves the life we think we deserve. I think a lot of us want things, but we fail to realize that we're not actually willing to work for the things that we claim we want. And so when we think about our dreams, our aspirations, our goals, it's also important to recognize, well, what are the obstacles that are getting in the way of us achieving those things? And sometimes it could be a tangible obstacle, but sometimes it could also be us. It could be you as a person. It could be your negative self-talk. It could be the fact that you're always doubting yourself. It could be the fact that you're always minimizing your desires. Some of us actually don't achieve things because we tell ourselves, oh, that's not important. Oh, maybe this is not as of a big deal to achieve as something else. And the reality is, if it's something that you want to accomplish in life, it really doesn't matter what other people think about it. You get to decide what you want to achieve in life. And so I want to help you when it comes to doing the work of giving yourself the life you think you deserve. What are some things that you need to take into account when it comes to walking the path of trying to succeed or trying to achieve the things you desire? The first thing is that you need vision and you need clarity. Now, you might not have a detailed vision of what you think your life looks like, but I do think you need to have some form of a blueprint in place. You have to have some idea of where it is you are trying to go. I remember working at a job once where my supervisor said, we are building the plane as we fly it. And sometimes that is what life looks like. Sometimes the details of what we're trying to achieve don't really come to fruition until we actually start taking steps towards something, and more details start to come to the surface regarding the next step that we need to take. And so when it comes to getting vision and clarity, this involves more than just a fleeting thought. It requires deep introspection and careful consideration of what it is that you want in life. And the reason why it's important to ask yourself, what do you want, is because sometimes we are building the plane with someone else's blueprint. And what that means is we are saying, I want this, but the only reason why I want it is because my parents told me that this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. I want this, but the only reason why I want it is because it's what I see everybody else online doing. A common example of that is this new shift in focus on social media where everybody is talking about the importance of entrepreneurship. And sometimes I'll see content where people are downplaying full-time jobs and saying that entrepreneurship is the only goal someone should have in life. But the reality is, you might decide, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. That's not the plane that I'm trying to build. I'm actually trying to get a promotion at the job that I'm at now. And I actually want to stay either in a corporate environment, wherever it is that you are. You might decide that you enjoy clocking in and clocking out. You like having PTO and sick days, and you like that if something happens, you can get FMLA. You like all of these systems in place. It takes careful consideration to look at your life and say, no, this is actually what I want for myself. That's great if you all want to be entrepreneurs, but for me, I enjoy being an employee. I enjoy not being the boss. I enjoy having my time to myself outside of my work hours. I know that I work 8 hours a day, and outside of that, I can commit to other things. And so it takes a lot of deep introspection and careful consideration to be able to look at your life and cultivate some sense of vision and clarity, because you need to make sure the thing you're striving for is truly coming from your heart and your spirit, because it's what you desire for yourself. And the reason why vision and clarity is also so important is because it's going to help you identify what are the next steps you need to make. And when you can identify the next steps that you need to make, it now helps you figure out, well, if I'm building the plane, what are the tools that I now need to build the plane? And you have to understand that if I'm an entrepreneur and you're working full time, you and I are building two different planes. And so some of the tools I'm using may not be applicable to you in your life. Again, this is why careful consideration is important. And the reason why vision and clarity is important is because when you have clarity on what you're building in front of you, you can use discernment to say, actually, I'm not going to take advice from this person because we're not trying to be on the same plane. We're not even building the same plane. So their instruction manual is going to look completely different from mine. The tools that they need to build their plane is going to look completely different from mine. But it takes discernment and it takes wisdom to be able to have an objective view and say, oh, we want two different things. And so I want you to ask yourself, how can you live a life of discernment? And when you have discernment, you actually gain more clarity regarding the things that you want, because it helps you to recognize how those things align with your goals, your beliefs, and your values. Because when we're not clear on what we want or where we're trying to go, we can take advice from anyone. We also start to use different tools and methods that aren't applicable to our lives or where we're trying to go. I say this a lot about the concept of healing. What might work for me may not work for someone else. Somebody might really thrive going to a therapist and doing CBT, and someone else might thrive going to a therapist who only focuses on DBT or EMDR. And so we have to remember that there are even times where you know someone who is going in the same direction as you, but you still have different outcomes and different ideas of what you want when you get to your goal, when you get to your destination. I work with a lot of people who are therapists who have consulting practices the way that I do, but some of my friends, their goal is when they get to the finish line, they specifically want to maybe work on opening a trauma center. Where for me, when I get to my finish line, I don't want to do that. And so we're doing very similar things where there's so much overlap, but I can recognize that when I get to my destination, when this plane lands, we're going in different directions because we want different things, even though I know the plane took the same route. And so even with that, you have to learn how to use discernment. You have to learn how to ask yourself, what can I take from this person or these concepts that are applicable to my life, and what do I need to leave behind? And when you leave those things behind, you get more clarity. And when you have clarity and when you have discernment, you have a greater vision of what you want to do when you get to where you're trying to go. You also have a greater vision of how to build the plane. And so I really encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself, how can you create a more detailed life, and how can you create more room in your life to be introspective, but also practice careful consideration of the choices that you're making when it comes to giving yourself the life you think you deserve. The second thing I want you to be thinking about is, how can you start to overcome limiting beliefs that you've placed on yourself? Because sometimes we want things, but we tell ourselves lies. We beat ourselves up. We put ourselves down. And so if you're beating yourself up, putting yourself down, do you really think you deserve that thing? Why are you tearing yourself apart so much? Why do you spend so much time engaging in self-doubt? Why do you choose to use your energy The little bit of energy that you have after a long day, maybe tending to the kids, doing work, living life, the little bit of energy that you have left over, why do you choose to tear yourself apart with it? There are so many times where we're not giving ourselves the life we think we deserve because we are spending too much time engaging in self-doubt, engaging in negative thoughts, tearing ourselves down, downplaying the things that we want. And what you have to understand is that you are the person who has to take action in order for your life to be different. So if you're telling yourself you're not capable, well, you're most likely not going to take action. You're going to believe yourself. So if I sit around all day tearing myself down, well, then why would I work toward being a better person? Why would I work toward wanting something different from myself if I spent the whole night telling myself how horrible and unworthy I am, that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough? And so I want you to be thinking about the things that you say to yourself, because a lot of us don't understand that the seed of self-doubt will start to take root, and that seed will continue to grow. And as it continues to grow, you find yourself creating more lies and more negative concepts about who you are because you have not done the work of uprooting that seed. We're people, and so sometimes as a form of self-preservation, we might tear ourselves down every now and then, but you have to ask yourself, is this truth? Do I really feel this way about myself? And if I do, I need to work on changing this. Because if I don't work on changing this, then I'm just going to stay stuck where I am. So if you want to give yourself the life you think you deserve, you also need to start thinking better about who you are as a person. Now, the last thing I want to share with you, I've said it a few times, but I want to narrow in on this, and it's the importance of taking action. If there are things that you want, you have to be willing to give it to yourself. And I really encourage you to ask yourself, why do you want the things that you want? Because there are so many times where I will hear people say, I want to achieve this and I want to achieve that. And by the time I'm X age, I want to have this. And I'll say, okay, well, what are some actionable steps that you're taking? And they're doing absolutely nothing. There are even times where people will scroll on social media and start to feel bad about themselves and say, well, I wish I had what this person had. And you start to do that comparison thing. And then I'll say, okay, well, if you want that person's life so bad, what are you actually doing to achieve it on your end? And they're doing absolutely nothing. So a big part of giving yourself the life you think you deserve is you have to take action, but you also have to be very realistic and ask yourself, does this thing just sound good? It probably sounds good to say I'm a content creator for a living, but do you really want to be a content creator? And if the answer is no, then why are you spending your energy focused on being a content creator when you know that's not what you want? You know that's not what you're willing to work toward. You know that you're not willing to put in the effort, energy, time, or even make the sacrifices or take the risks that are needed to be a content creator or an influencer. So I want you to apply that concept to all things in life, because often we're saying, I want this and I deserve this. But are you working toward it? Sometimes I'll hear people say, I believe I'm deserving of a life of ease. And I'll say, okay, but when was the last time you set some boundaries? What are some boundaries that you have in place in your life so that you can have ease? And then it's crickets. And so what I'm saying here is you have to remember that there are an abundance of things that are outside of your control in life, but there are so many things in life that you can control. And you can only control yourself. You decide what decisions you want to make. And so if there is something that you want and that you think you are deserving of, you have to be willing to get it. You also have to be willing to work for it. You also have to be willing to take the risks necessary to get that thing. And if you're not willing to do it, then it's also okay to say, I changed my mind. I actually don't think this is the thing that I want for myself. So I want you to take the time to really be clear and set a vision for yourself. I want you to be thinking about that plane that needs building, because it's already flying. Because remember, life is the plane. We're already here on Earth. And so you need to keep building the plane as you fly. You need to keep building your life as you continue to live. And you have to ask yourself, where do I want to land this plane? Because there are multiple destinations ahead of me. Because after I land, I might take off again. And I might land and then take off again after that. And so I want you to be thinking about, where are you trying to go? But most importantly, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to build the life that you want? That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform. Also, don't forget to share it with a friend and on social media. To stay connected with me and my work, follow me on social media and subscribe to the Mindful with Minaa newsletter, which can be found on my website, www.minab.com. You can also continue learning from me by ordering my book, Owning Our Struggles, which is available at all major book retailers. Stay tuned for a new episode next week, and most importantly, remember to be present and stay mindful. Take care, and goodbye for now.